Hey, thanks for joining me. Super excited to have you here. I've got Tyson Thacker here. We're going to talk about how to surrender to God and let go. How is it we can do some amazing and sometimes unexplainable things, like heal our own bodies by the power of our thoughts? Mother's intuition, the law of attraction. Can we really tap into our subconscious mind? Can we really create our own realities? It begs the question, are we novice gods? All right, hey, I am so excited about today's episode. This, I think, is going to be one of those life-changing episodes for you. For you, it has been for me in what Tyson has taught me. So let me just give you a little background on this. Years ago, there were 4 or 5 of us that gathered together from high school after 25 years.
Crazy, right?
Very crazy. We had not seen each other in 25 years, and one of the guys had the most intriguing question, and he said, okay guys, we haven't seen each other for 25 years. What is one story you can share with me that basically sums up your life? Isn't that a beautiful question? Does it kind of make you wonder what would be your question or your story if you had 3 minutes to talk? And Tyson told this story about, well, after I retired, and I'm like, wait a second, didn't we graduate at the same time? Aren't we the same age? How did you do that? But he told this experience about, his business wasn't doing great, and he started to do some things that really changed his life. And so much of it revolves around surrendering to God, right. Totally surrendering, letting go, letting Him take over. So I want to record this. This is really for me, guys, so that we can figure out how to do this in a way that we really tap into higher power.
Well, first off, Scott, let me tell you this. It was so fun to get back together then, and it's been fun to get back together since then as well, because there are those relationships in your life that mean so much to us, and you're one of them.
Oh,
so thank you.
Thank you.
And when you talk about questions, the reality is, here's a statement that I love, that I live my life by. The quality of the questions will determine the quality of your life. So in other words, the better question you can ask, the better answers that you can receive.
Okay.
And that relates to every aspect of your life, whether it's in your business, whether it's at home, you name it, but especially in your relationship with God. What kind of questions do you need to ask right now to God that are going to help you turn your life over to God? That's what this really boils down to in my eyes.
Yeah.
And so, Scott, you mentioned that I had retired. I turned to God, and He told me to write a book. That's what He did. And so I wrote a book, thought, okay, this book has all of these business answers that all of these people need to hear. Took a year of my life with my brother writing it. Went out there, talked to a lot of people, did a whole bunch of training. Just wasn't moving the needle, though. The book was amazing, in my eyes at least, right? But it just wasn't getting the audience that, we were talking to a lot of people. It just wasn't moving people to action. And so I started turning to God, because one of the things, Scott, that I realized was, as I looked back at my journal, as I became more and more successful and retired, there were less and less entries that had to do with how I turned my life over to God. And I realized that I was taking it on with my own power instead of God's power. And so I said, okay, I need to get back to the basics, and I really need to focus on what the Lord wants me to do. So at that point, I even said, Lord, I will stop traveling. I'll stop talking about this book. I will do anything. I'll go back and do anything that needs to happen, because I had spent millions of dollars taking this book to the public, and it got to the point where I really needed to do something different, to take care of my family, and really to make an impact in other people's lives. And so every day, here's what I do, going back to the power of the question. I would ask the question that I needed to ask that day that I felt like was going to help me progress. Okay. Sometimes, well, in that early stage, it was with business, but a lot of times since, it's been with personal stuff, with me leading a church congregation, all of those different types of questions that everybody has that are day-to-day questions. But I'll tell you this, the harder the question it is, the better the question is as well. In other words, test the Lord because he is always there for you. Does that make sense?
Well, it does, but I want to really make sure I understand what you mean by the harder the question.
So it's something that probably has been plaguing you for years. It's probably a question that you've been worried about. Maybe it's the relationship between you and your spouse. Maybe it's the relationship between you and a child. Maybe it's improving your career. It doesn't matter what that is. Whatever you've been having the most difficulty with, start with that. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So here's how it works.
Okay.
You get out your journal, you write down the question. As you start to pray, because I want you to pray before you do anything, the very first important thing is to have a lot of gratitude and thank the Lord for as many things that come into your mind as possible. That's you opening up the opportunity for the Lord to understand that this relationship between you and him is really important. Then second, ask that question and then open your scriptures and start looking for the answer. That's how God speaks to us in a major way. And I want to bring up Scott, James 1:5, where it says, if any of you lack wisdom, let him ask of God, that giveth to all men liberally, and upbraideth not or punisheth not for asking the question, and it shall be given him. But here's the key. But you need to ask in faith, nothing wavering. For he that wavereth is like the wave of the sea, driven with the wind and tossed. So you've got to really believe that you're going to get the answer. Okay. And so I started reading until I got the answer, and usually it was within a couple of verses. And then I'd write down that answer, and then I'd go start acting on it. Now, does that mean
you would get the answer within a couple of verses?
Yes, generally. Now, sometimes it was a couple chapters. Now, the reality is, what's happening is it's not necessarily what's in the verse. Sometimes it is. And I would just open my scriptures randomly most of the time. But sometimes I would hear in my mind's eye or in my head where I specifically should go. Okay. And sometimes it would be in the verse itself. But most of the time, here's the key, that it's through what comes into your mind. So the Lord is speaking to you as you pray and have gratitude and ask for him to give you an answer. The Lord gives you the next step, which is talking to you in your mind as you open your mind through the scriptures. And then as you act on it, the Lord's going to give you more. So, Scott, one of the questions that you had from me the last time we talked about this was you said, okay, so I get it. This is working for me. But then what is the next step? Well, sometimes the answer doesn't come for weeks. Sometimes you need to show your faith that you're going to continue to do this. Other times it happens that day, but here's part of what's important to understand too, is that as you get that answer, you're going to get incrementally through the day additional answers that you need to be open to. So you've opened that prayer, don't close it.
Okay.
So have the opportunity to say, Heavenly Father, please help me to continue to get answers, and as I act on them, give me more. So you are listening every hour to what's happening. And there's times where you may not even realize that is, you'll get something that comes into your mind that you go and act on that has nothing to do with what you feel like is the next step. But you were telling me right before we got on this video about an answer to a prayer that you had received just last week, that you'd been looking for, that if you wouldn't have gone and taken action in talking to a specific person, that you wouldn't have realized that that was the next step, right?
Yeah.
And so it's taking action day by day, one small step at a time. What I think about it as, let's say that you're in the dark.
Okay. And
your flashlight starts to flicker, and you don't have a very clear path to walk upon. And it's starting, you're needing to get back to your family that's at camp, and a thunderstorm starts. You're starting to see lightning, and that lightning occasionally lights the path really well, and you can see far enough ahead. That's what the Lord wants us to do, is to exercise that faith as it talks about in James, a little bit at a time, and take that next step into the darkness. But then he lights that path, and that's the Spirit is talking to us and helping us to give us those next steps through God.
I like that. Now, one thing that I'm not clear on that I want to make sure I understand, because I believe that you can ask, like, what's the one single most important question I most need to ask God today?
Sure.
And I've been doing that as a practice, and that's wonderful. But you can ask more questions, right? And how do you do that appropriately?
So the very first thing that I do is I do this every day. So as I get an answer, then that leads me to the next step. For instance, let me give you an example of something that I did recently. My wife really wanted to get the kids a dog.
Yeah.
It's the last thing I wanted to do.
I'm there with you.
Now, this may seem simple, right? Because this is for everyday things too. And I really had a hard heart about it. And so I wasn't willing to ask that question for a while, to be honest with you. But I said, okay, this is important to my wife. And one of the reasons why it was important is because we've got a few of our kids that I think emotionally that a dog would help. So that day, I knelt down and said, Heavenly Father, I need to know if what my wife wants, is this going to help our children in the way that she wants it to. If we're going to get a dog, I want to know that this is going to help our children, because this is a 10, 15-year decision we're making, really. If you get a dog, they're going to be around for a while. Yeah. It's almost like having another child. And so as I knelt down and asked that, and then I opened my scriptures and started to read, this is another way that you can know that you're on track, is still in James. If you go to chapter 3, verse 17, it says, "But the wisdom that is from above is first pure, then peaceable, gentle, and easy to be entreated, full of mercy and good fruits, without partiality and without hypocrisy." So I felt that peace that it just talked about there. And I knew that the Lord was telling me that, you know what, it is going to help the kids through that peace that I felt. So sometimes it's in your mind that you get the answer. Sometimes it's in your heart that you get the answer. And I like to have both. And so to finalize what you ask about what do you know the next question was, my next question was, okay, so if we got a dog, that would help our children. So my next question was, should we get a dog? And I felt that same peace. And so I begrudgingly went home and said, honey, I finally asked. And I got my own witness that that's what we should be doing. And so we're going to be doing that in the next couple weeks. We've actually found a breeder, and we found the type of dog that's going to be family friendly. And one of my concerns was, hey, this is going to be a dog that gets hair all over there every place. It's going to be just a mess. And we've worked our way through each of those steps with God as our partner.
Okay. So you ask a question, you get an answer, and then you can just kind of keep
going down that same path, because it's just like that story I told, that you still have a destination you need to get to. So it's the next logical step in that process that you ask the next question, and you ask the next question, ask the next question, and it gets you to the end goal.
Okay. I like that. I hope that helps you as you're looking at how you can turn your life over to God, how you can have His help with you always. And it so comes down to asking questions, asking the right questions, and very specific questions. So,
absolutely.
Anyway, I hope that helps. Join us again. We're going to do another episode to go a little bit deeper on another topic. But hope that helps you as you figure out the powers that you have within and the powers that you have without that you can tap into to make your life extraordinary. What do you think? You've heard our thoughts? Now let's hear yours. In the comment section below, share what impressions came to your mind. What did you get out of this? If you have had thoughts to take action, please do so. Always listen to your inner voice. It's your ultimate guidance system. Of course, the best place to take action is at scottwilhite.com, because if you join me for a free web class, I will reward you by sending you my purpose planner so you can have a physical guide to help you get in touch with your inner guide. What if you are a God in the making? That would mean there's purpose to your life, meaning to your challenges. You have a great work to do. May you have the courage, faith, and power to become who you were truly meant to be. See you next time.